Okay, let's go for it. So, welcome everybody to this month's Martin Audio webinar. This month we're going to be looking at our ADORN commercial installation series. It's going to be quite a quick one today because it's not a particularly technical product series to run through, but we felt it was kind of worth having a dedicated half an hour, 40 minutes to the series, just because there are things worth knowing about it, and also it's fairly new and there's new things to talk about. So let's get on. So my name is Simon Purse. I'm a product support engineer for Martin Audio. I'm joined today online by my colleague Ben Tucker. He'll be answering any questions. If you have any, just type them away in the questions box. It's my job to do a lot of training. I write a lot of training. I do a lot of system design work. Any kind of technical requirements you need, you can just give us a shout at technical@martin-audio.com, and myself or any of my colleagues will be happy to give you a hand. So we're going to have a very brief introduction, and then we're just going to have a look at each of the loudspeakers in their own right. A brief look at the hardware, some of the kind of system configuration, some of the ideas that kind of go into configuring a commercial system. Briefly kind of touch on the amplification and DSP, a little bit of software, and then just finish up with just a couple application examples just to show you where there's some real world examples of these speakers being deployed. Okay, so the commercial install market is ever growing. It's probably going to be one of the strongest markets out there, really, moving into at least the next year, I would imagine. So this is a really kind of key market for us as a company, and I think as an industry to kind of keep pushing and breaking through into this commercial installation market. So we've come up with this ADORN series. At the moment, there's 6 speakers in the range, all the way from really small, little discrete kind of 4-inch boxes that fit on the wall, all the way up to some ceiling speakers and some pendant speakers for some larger kind of open spaces. And these are perfect for obviously transport terminals, retail chains, bars, corporate AV, educational AV, all the way through the kind of the ballpark where you kind of don't need huge SPL, but you need that quality coverage and that Martin Audio sound to kind of run through a venue. Could even be in the foyer leading up to a larger PA system in a different room, and it will keep that kind of Martin Audio quality tone as you move throughout the venue. Currently, the on-wall series, they're all shipping. They've been released and kind of they're out in the market and have been for a while. The new ceiling speakers and the pendant speaker will be available from the end of October, early November. Okay, so let's dive into sort of the specifics of each of these different loudspeakers. So this is the smallest. This is the baby of the series. It's an ultra compact passive two-way system with a 4-inch LF and a 0.75-inch HF unit there. It's 40 watt AES, 160 watt peak. So that's going to give us a maximum SPL of 109 dB. So our continuous with our crest factor is going to be 103. Both this A40 and the A55 are 110 in the horizontal and 80 in the vertical. This one goes down to 98. All of them have built-in overload protection. So effectively, I would always recommend having a limiter, but should you not have one, the kind of pop circuit will just blow. This will stop the components from cooking, as it were, or blowing. And once the system has cooled down enough, it will reset and your system has been protected. All of the ADORN series, if you can see that the T on the end of there, the A40T, there's an A55T, and then all of the other components of the series all have line transformers. So the on will have them as an option. The ceiling series and the pendant have them built in. So moving up a model to the A55, we've now got a 5.25-inch LF, sticking with the same HF unit. 50 watt AES, 200 watt peak, so that's going to give us a little bit more SPL there, another 4 dB to 113 dB peak. Same in the horizontal and vertical dispersion. This larger LF diaphragm is going to let us go down a few hertz, going to get down to 90 hertz. So it's quite a full range box for an extremely small footprint. Again, with the built-in overload protection and a 70/100 volt line transformer version if you require one. So with the new ceiling speakers, this is an ADORN ceiling speaker, 40 TS. So it's a transformer version. It's got a shallow back can. Of course, it's in the ADORN series. So this is, as it being an A40, as a 4-inch LF with the 0.75-inch HF units. Again, 40 watts at 160 watts peak, giving us a maximum SPL of 108 dB. These the smaller ones are 180 degrees conical dispersion all the way up to 10K. So this is going to give you a really wide, even pattern coverage pattern as you move around the unit. Particularly ideal for maybe slightly lower ceilings, as this wider dispersion is going to really kind of spread that energy out evenly. Going down to 106 hertz, and again, built-in overload protection is standard, and the 170 volt line transformer included. These have specifically got quite shallow backhands, as well as the model above it, which we'll look at in a second. And this has been designed this way specifically to fit into the very shallow ceiling compartments of cruise ships. So these can be deployed in very little space, and yeah, you don't need this larger kind of exterior can taking up room if this is a problem for you. So you can see this again here in the ACS 55 TS. So this is again a shallow backcan version. We've got the 5.25-inch LF, and sticking again with the 0.75-inch HF unit. Again, as well as the on-wall 55, the A55. This is 50 watt AES, 200 watt peak, giving us our maximum SPL of 113 dB, 180 degrees conical, all the way up to 10K as well. Extending the LF a little bit there, and as always with the overload protection and the transformer included. Now, the largest ceiling speaker in the range is this ACS 55T. So this doesn't have the shallow backhand. This has a kind of extended backhand to give us a little bit more in the LF with the port tuning. This is again has the complement of the 55 or the A55 driver complement, the 5.25-inch LF, and the 0.75-inch HF, and again with the power as well, the power rating of 50 up to 200 watts peak, giving us our 113 dB peak. This one has 150 degrees conical up to the 7K. So this is sort of a slightly more powerful, slightly deeper box. Maybe better to consider this in a slightly higher ceiling, as this narrower dispersion, although it's still 150 degrees, this slightly narrower dispersion might be more conducive to a slightly raised ceiling compared with some of the smaller models. And this is a kind of a first for Martin Audio. This is our first pendant speaker that we've ever made. So this is the ACP 55T. Again, as with all of them, they're compact passive two-way speakers, sticking with the 55 driver complement with the 5.25 LF and the 0.75 HF, and the same power rating of the 50 watt to 200 watt peak, 109 dB peak. Obviously, this is going to be completely in free space, so that's going to be a little bit reduced SPL just because the energy is radiating spherically. 150 degree conical, again, assuming that you're probably going to deploy these slightly higher than an average ceiling, and an impressive sort of LF extension all the way down to 90 hertz for such a small pendant loudspeaker. And as always, with the overload protection and a built-in 100 or 70 volt line transformer. So that's the range. Obviously, there's quite a lot of information there, but effectively there's a loudspeaker for kind of every type of deployment, whether you're on wall, you're in ceiling, or you're actually just in free space. So looking at the hardware, this is quite a sort of brief run through really, simply because as this is a commercial install series, we don't want to have 100 different accessories and all these different configurations, because this is very much a kind of plug and play commercial deployment of this series. So we have a wall bracket. This is the same wall bracket that we deploy with our CDD5. This is weatherized ABS plastic, so we can use that with our weatherized CDD, but we can of course also use it with our ADORN series, especially outdoors when we're using our AIP kit, which we'll come on to in a second. So this can be deployed in sort of sheltered outdoor spaces in beer gardens and pubs, etc. This does give you horizontal and vertical kind of steering of the pan and tilt. If you do want to deploy this loudspeaker slightly closer to a wall for a kind of a little bit more of a discrete wall bracket, you can actually remove one of these axes of alteration. So if I don't need to pan it, but I do want to tilt it up and down, or I want to tilt it, but I don't need to pan it, I can remove one of these sections. And as you can see in the top right render there, I can actually get it pretty close to the wall if I need to. We have a ceiling bracket, which allows us to kind of to mount it directly to a ceiling, as you would imagine. The actual wall bracket itself from the previous slide attaches to the base of this this bracket to give you again the option of having additional up and down tilt or pan if required. But of course, being a ceiling bracket, you can pivot it in any direction that you require when you actually mount that to the ceiling or a beam itself. All of these brackets are available in white and black. We also have the AIP kits, which I referred to earlier. So this can be used with the A40, the A55, and a CDD5. With the ADORN series, this gives it an IP rating of 44. And this would be recommended use in a kind of sheltered outdoor area. So this isn't probably, you're not going to want to deploy this on a beach or on the deck of a kind of ocean going boat, but if you want to use this in a beer garden or somewhere where it's not going to be completely exposed to the elements, then this would be recommended. And finally, we have our suspension cable for our ACP55T pendant loudspeaker. So this is just an adjustable length steel cable with a snap hook on the end. It's got a 5-to-1 safety factor all the way up to 45 kilos. We would of course recommend always having a safety as well, just as best practice. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple system configurations. So 100-volt line. I'm sure many people on the call probably have used this or have heard of this before, but for those who haven't, 100-volt line is generally used where loudspeakers are a long way from their power amplifier, or from where you have many of them strung along a single kind of cable of amplification. And this is just done because having well, not extremely long, but having long cable runs can be really inefficient. So this is much like having the power pylons or the power lines that run along the side of motorways all over the world. It would be extremely inefficient to run these low voltages because you lose so much to resistance. So using a 100-volt line system, we can use a 100 volts or a 70 volt. So this is much higher voltage than required, but we use the transformer to effectively apply resistance to give us the correct output. There's two different 100-volt line or 70-volt line transformer taps or tap kind of series on the 4 inches and the 5.25-inch loudspeakers. So as you can see, there's a 20, a 10, a 5, or a 2.5, or a 20, 10, and a 5 on the A40. On the A55, we have slightly higher power taps just because you're more likely to need that extra power for the extended LF and the SPL that it's capable of. So what is a 100-volt speaker tapping? We can tap it effectively at different points to give us different resistances. And this effectively changes the power which each loudspeaker is able to receive. So we can send one channel of DSP and signal, for example, string it to a whole bunch of different loudspeakers, and we can then tap these to give us a shared kind of load across the line. And we can also change these if required, which would give us independent volume control of each loudspeaker in the different locations, even though they're only being sent one signal if required. As standard, all of these loudspeakers in the range are 16 ohms. So that means we can still string a whole bunch of them together, even if we don't have a transformer version, or even if a 100-volt line system isn't required. So being 16 ohms, of course, if we link them together in pairs, we're going to get 8 ohms. We then string 4 together, we'll have 4 ohms. And going one more, well, we can put all 8 together in a row on one line, and that's going to give us a load of 2 ohms. And of course, it's always worth checking that your amplifier is capable of putting power into 2 ohms, but more often than not, this is pretty standard these days. So basically, you can string a whole bunch of these speakers together with very little amplification, and due to the limiters being built in with the overload protection, no DSP if required, even though that's not recommended. So another thing to consider, I guess, with commercial systems, with 100-volt line systems or loudspeaker ceiling speakers, is the placement and the distribution spacing of these speakers. So we kind of need to ask ourselves, what am I trying to cover? What is the height of my listener? What frequency range do I want? How loud does it need to be? These are all kind of considerations that we need to look at. Ease Focus is a brilliant tool for looking at this, which we're going to sort of touch on briefly. But yeah, all of these are questions that we need to kind of consider, and especially with ceiling speakers. So we have 2 different dispersions with our ADORN series. So the shallow backhands have the 150 degree conical dispersion, with the larger oh no, I've got that the wrong way around, haven't I? The ACS 40TS has the 180 degree, while the larger 55s have the 150 degree dispersion. So that's going to dictate, according to our ceiling height and what we're trying to cover, how far apart we can put these loudspeakers. So for example, if we draw the loudspeakers further apart, we're going to have a dead spot potentially in between the loudspeakers, and this is of course working in 2 directions as we move across a horizontal plane. But equally, if we raise the speakers up, maybe we now have them too close together and we're using kind of an inefficient number of loudspeakers to cover an area. So these need to be ideas that we can consider. If our loudspeakers are too close together, do we want an extended LF response? Can we then move up to a larger model with a narrower dispersion, and then this giving us a kind of a more efficient use of energy across a space, but with an increased operating bandwidth? And of course, an increased operating bandwidth is needed more often than not. If you're in a pub garden, if you're in a bar, maybe you want a little bit more LF extension than the top boxes in this series alone can offer you. So of course we have an SX1110. This is a single 10-inch sub, goes all the way down to 50 Hertz with a peak of 127 dB. We also have a double 10-inch version. So that's our SX210. Again, sticking with the down to 50 Hertz, but gives us our extra SPL of 130 dB peak. If you need a little bit more low end and you want to keep the SPL, then you can move up to our SX112, giving us a 48 Hertz and 132 dB peak. All of these are really small footprint, but especially the SX110 and the SX210, they're really kind of impressive LF output for such a small box. It's designed to kind of fit into banquet seating, and it is very subtle and discreet if deployed correctly. But with all systems with multiple sources, another argument for using DSP, of course, you're going to want to tune your room, but you're also going to want to be able to time align. And that doesn't matter whether it's delay locations or if you're time aligning a sub to a top. And one of the really quick ways to do this, especially if you're just trying to kind of get off the ground running, is to play a 90 Hertz tone through both of the units. And as we can see in this example, the subwoofer is actually arriving at our ears first. So what we need to do is delay the subwoofer signal back so we have one coherent wavefront hitting us from both of these sources. So a really quick way to do that is just to invert the polarity of the subwoofer. We can then delay the subwoofer signal until we've made it as quiet in our listening position as we possibly can. So this has given us the greatest cancellation in our listening position. We can then pop the phase back into the positive, and this will give us the greatest summation. And now we have a coherent wavefront from the system. Now, this is only a kind of ballpark way to do it. This isn't the best way to do it. Using some RTA or some FFT software like Smart, for example, is going to give you the best of both worlds. It's going to give you the, of course, you're going to be able to hear what you're actually doing, but you're also going to be able to see the changes that you've made and make sure that you haven't used the wrong wrap or kind of any other issue or mistake that you could make in this process. But this is just a good kind of ballpark way to get yourself into a good place for some deeper system tuning. We've actually got another webinar which goes a little bit deeper into this, which is our low frequency system design webinar, which is available from martin-audio.com/training. So if you are interested into how we timeline systems a little bit deeper and a little look into the software that we use, that would be a great place to start. So talking about delaying subwoofers, we should have a look at some amplification and some DSP. So although the ADORN series doesn't demand DSP, you don't have to have EQ, you don't have to have limiting protection, we would absolutely recommend it. It's always better to have limiters on your system just so that you know that you're in control. It's always better to be able to time align your system and to be able to account for any potential anomalies in a room, for example. You can do your best to try and tune the system to get the best results. But equally, there are the baffle effect, for example, in ceiling speakers, which is particularly relevant to having a DSP set. So when we place our ceiling speakers into a ceiling, we get something called the baffle effect occur, which is where coupling with the ceiling, the energy from the loudspeaker is going to affect our frequency response. Excuse me. This effect is going to vary at frequency, and it's also going to vary depending on a whole bunch of different variables, what the ceiling's made of, the space behind the ceiling, the spacing, all this kind of stuff. But with a DSP set, we can start to control these anomalies that the speaker can be influenced by. So just having a look at this is a passive response of the ACS 55T. So in blue, we can see this is 4 pi response. So this is effectively free space. So energy radiating into a spherical space. This is our frequency response shown in blue. In red, this is half space. So this is 2 pi. So this is energy radiating into a half space room. So effectively, the speaker has been placed in the ceiling, and we can see that this LF extension is kind of has increased as we have placed the ceiling speaker into the ceiling. So this is where the longer frequencies and the low end are kind of coupling together. They're reflecting back off the ceiling to rejoin the energy radiating from the loudspeaker, and this is pushing our low frequency energy up. It doesn't have a huge effect on the HF, just simply because the wavelengths are shorter. But this low F energy is going to have an effect on our loudspeaker's performance. So here we are again. This is both of these frequency responses are in the half space. So this is in situ. The blue one there is showing with our DSP set. So this is with our preset. The red is without. And as you can see, we've reduced that 200 hertz lift, which is obviously due to the wavelength and the proximity of the speaker. This is where it's kind of coupling most. It's kind of important to know that this 200 hertz region as well, due to the kind of standard location of ceiling speakers, can be a bit of a problem area and cause a little bit of a muddy kind of tone. So our DSP set has managed to reduce this 200 hertz lift. We've also taken advantage of the kind of the LF at the bottom there, but we've brought it back in control with a high pass filter. So this is a really kind of important graph to show you, to say that you don't have to have a DSP set, but you're going to have a much better result, a much more controlled result if you do. And of course, you can then take advantage of things like room tuning, delay, and some extra protection. So if you need some DSP, we have our DX 0.5 and our DX 4. So our DX 0.5 is a little bit more entry level. It's still got all of the kind of specifications that you would expect from a loudspeaker management system. You've got, EQ, delay, you've got dynamics. You can control via USB, and it's a 2-in 6-out processor. The our more high-end unit, the DX4, this is a 4-in 8-out loudspeaker processor and matrix. So this has got network control. This has got audio via Dante. You have AES, much more comprehensive limiting system. So our VX limiting, it allows us to limit a passive circuit independently. So even though we have one channel of DSP, we can actually limit the LF and the HF independently of each other, giving us a really quite comprehensive and powerful system. Being networked, we can of course control it in ViewNet alongside all of our other products. This allows us to trigger snapshots, we can insert presets, we can control things over an Ethernet backbone. Of course, there's Dante on board as well, primary and secondary, so we've got some redundancy, and just generally a really kind of strong touring processor. For our install series, we recommend our VIA amplifiers as our install range. So this is all the way from 250 watts into 8 ohms in our smallest there, which is the VIA 204, or 2004 rather, all the way up to the most powerful being the 5002, which is 1600 watts into 8 ohms. So these are a perfect kind of companion with our ADORN series, and then potentially some larger subwoofers to accompany them if they are required. A little bit on software. Ease Focus, we currently have the on-wall series only at the moment in Ease Focus from the ADORN series. These can be downloaded from our website there, so it's martin-audio.com/support/measurement data. These GLLs can be used in Ease Focus and Ease 4. There's CLF data available as well in the download package. So Ease Focus is a really powerful tool for reviewing system designs or just looking deeper into how our system will perform in any kind of given area. So that's going to let us look at SPL, it's going to look at time response, frequency response, the dispersion, how high we should place our speakers, how far apart. All of this information is really critical to a good design, and just really gives you a much more comprehensive idea of what's going on. Ease 4 is a much more advanced system. There is a license required for Ease 4, but I mean, any more information you require about that, you can just give us a shout at technical@martin-audio.com. We can look into that or have that kind of conversation with you if you require anything slightly more advanced. But one of the best things about Ease Focus 3 is that you can actually just click a button and it will print you a report. So this is going to show you your SPL response, your frequency response, any EQ that you've put in the system. It's also going to show you the location of each of your loudspeakers relative to a kind of origin point. It's just a really great tool to quickly show to a client or a customer, here's a design, here's what we can expect from it, here's the kind of quality of the result that we can achieve with these products. Further into Ease Focus, we do have a webinar dedicated to it, which you can find online in our training section. So if you are interested in Ease Focus, there's a lot more information on there. But as well as the ADORN series, we also have CDD, the ADORN on wall, sorry, CDD, Blackline X, Blackline powered XD series, and the SX subwoofers. So got a huge catalog of point source boxes which you can model for free and kind of play around with and use in a wider kind of system design. Again, there's more information on that online if you require. So I'm just going to close up this webinar with a few application examples. So this is the Expert music venue in Bucharest. So this is the whole kind of outside area of this bar. So this is kind of like an outside kind of pretty cool bar and dining area with a larger venue inside, which I believe has VDQs. But yeah, the outside area got a whole bunch of SX110 subwoofers accompanied by the A55 ADORNs all the way along the wall, all in a kind of distributed system. And they're absolutely over the moon with the results they're able to achieve. And it's so discreet that they can kind of keep these blended in quite a kind of secluded way and yet achieve a really good quality of audio. A slightly more out the box system here. So this is with our astrospatial system. This is our immersive audio DSP, where we can effectively translate an audio file into a object which we can then move around a soundscape. And in this situation, in the University of Campania in Naples, they've actually deployed this DSP, this immersive DSP set with our A55 ADORN series. And you can see them all dotted around this room. So a presentation will occur on this screen, and then the audio or the soundscape will allow you to kind of be completely immersed as this audio washes around the room with these loudspeakers. Another system set up there. This is the Cheltenham Festival, the race festival in the UK. Probably unfortunately, one of the kind of the last festivals to happen in the UK recently. Again, using ADORNs outside in a barn area there, a bar area, sorry. I think this is a 100-volt line system, so you can just see there's a whole bunch of loudspeakers strung on a long line, getting really high-end quality audio for a very high-end and quite a classy event in Cheltenham. And another example, again, somewhere different. Again, this is in a planetarium reception area in Northern Ireland. We've actually got O-line and CDD in the planetarium itself, but out in the foyer, carrying on that kind of characteristic Martin audio sound, is the ADORN series there, very discreet and very tucked away in the reception area. And again, everybody working on these projects is completely over the moon and just blown away with the quality of audio that they can achieve with such a small box. So just in summary, it's a really affordable solution for kind of any deployment, whether it's transport terminals, a 100-volt line, or whether it's a high-end bar, a festival, corporate events, or educational AV. This really kind of is designed to fit in anywhere. This is designed to be a plug-and-play solution. So, of course, you can just string them all on a long line. You've got the limiters built in. There's no EQ required. But as we've said, if you want that really high-end finish, then DSP is, of course, always recommended. It's discreet. It's such a small footprint. You can really put these anywhere, and you're going to achieve a good sound. 6 models in the range for kind of ultimate flexibility for all these different spaces, whether it's a giant open room with no ceiling, whether you've got a ceiling, or whether you are outside in a bar and you need to run them along the wall. So there really is a kind of a solution for every event. So further to that, thank you very much for joining. I know this is brief. We would normally aim for a little bit longer than this for any particular model, but this is such a sort of plug and play solution, but we felt it just deserved its own kind of its own webinar. We have put this sort of brief one together. So thank you very much for joining.